Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webtoon Book Club, the series where I talk about stories that I've read off of the webcomic website, Webtoon. Today's story is Ghost Theater, a story that I very highly recommend, and I very highly recommend to no end, actually. The story is fantastic, it is enjoyable, and I hope you enjoy the telling. So today's story begins with a young actress winning an award for Best Young Actor. We then jump to her in a car with her parents having an argument. But that doesn't last long as they're then T-boned by a truck, and our young actress named Rahi is hospitalized. Her parents, on the other hand, don't make it out. Once she hears about this news, she falls into absolute distress. And this emotional distress causes her to gain a condition that the story calls poker face syndrome, where she is unable to express her emotion facially or even vocally. Her speaking is monotone, and her expression is bored. So, seeing that she can't really do acting jobs right now anymore with her inability to express, she wanders around trying to figure out what she's gonna do. And she wanders into an alley and she finds a door. And there seems to be something going on inside. So she opens the door and it's a theater with a performance going on. But there's only one person sitting close to the front. So she approaches the stage and the theater then suddenly comes to life. The seats are filled and the theater is bright and lively. But the audience isn't people per se, it's ghosts. And the only person that's not a ghost is the man that was sitting there before. But then something happens on stage. The actress on the stage is calling out for help, and Rahi is compelled to get onto the stage, and then ends up getting possessed by the actress. But while she's possessed, she's able to express herself. She's able to emote and inflect. Once she kind of wakes up from this, she wants to go find the theater again. She manages to find it. Oh, that's better. Where there she finds the. She just wanders around to try and see if she can find anybody. Once she does, we find our other two characters, Karen and Patty. Karen is the head of the theater. He manages everything and picks the plays that are going to be performed. The two are very hesitant to allow her to join. They really don't want her. But she's adamant to do so. She is not backing down on wanting to join the theater. So, reluctantly, Karen lets her. Patty, on the other hand, isn't so keen on the matter. But he has to go along with it. And then they explain what they do, where their job is to help spirits move on who are stuck on the earthly plane. But the rule with the ghost is they are not allowed to interact with those that they were deeply connected to in life. So, where was I? A warning came up and I got distracted. Right. So, their job is to help them. Their job specifically is to help the ghosts that have a connection with somebody else, which they call an ex. So, they get to see their first client, which is a nurse. Her story is that she had a crush on a doctor. And while she was helping the doctor in an instance on her way to an operation, an old lady stops her in the hallway. And the old lady wants her to check on her son, but she's on her way to something else and says we'll get to him afterwards. So he helps the doctor out, and at some point she sees that the doctor kind of has a connection with somebody else. But this other patient is a bit of a brat. So when the nurse is doing her duties, this other patient kind of treats her nasty like. And the nurse kind of gives her a bit of an earful about that. But after she does it, apparently later on, that patient tried to run away, but because she's in the hospital because she has a weak heart, this puts her into shock. Luckily, the patient didn't is able to get through that, but the nurse now feels responsible for it. And on her way to an emergency call, that old lady stops her in the hallway again. And once again, the nurse kind of brushes her off. But after getting an earful about the one patient trying to run away, she kind of feels guilty about the whole thing. And on her way home, she ends up getting attacked by the old lady and gets stabbed. And so she's then rushed to the hospital and goes straight to surgery. But during the surgery, the doctor ends up getting a call about the other patient going into shock again. And then the nurse goes into cardiac arrest at that moment as well, so the choice has to be one or the other. And the problem ends up being is the patient is able to get through that shock episode, but the nurse ends up being declared brain dead. And both of them need a heart transplant. But to be able to get but there's only one heart available. So the hospital makes the decision that the person that's going to get the heart transplant is going to be this other girl, not the nurse. So the nurse ends up dying. Patty and Rahi go out and do their field mission on it to find out more information what they can get. And what they find was the second half of what I just said. After the nurse basically lost her consciousness, because of course she wouldn't know what happened. But what they find is the doctor blamed himself for losing the nurse, and basically went into some deep depression. Well, they're going to go through with the performance, but they need the doctor to be there. The doctor receives a letter in the mail that then transports him to the Ghost Theater. The performance goes on, and the doctor realizes, the nurse ghost possesses Rahi, and the doctor realizes that that's the nurse. And the nurse just simply wants to tell him that she doesn't blame him for what happened, and that he can try and live his life more happily. And I guess he does. And the nurse is able to move on. Now it's time for their next client, who is a teacher. And her story begins with a administrator or somebody higher up in the school, being caught for some sense of corruption of some kind. And the teacher that did so, she admires very much. But the students want to kind of play a bit of a prank on her. So, they write a letter that makes it seem like it came from the hero teacher and an envelope full of money. She opens up the envelope, and the students catch her and take a picture of it to, I guess, hold as blackmail or something. So when our ghost teacher confronts our hero teacher about this and what happened, he confronts those boys. But the one boy is from a more prominent family, and the family kind of takes the agreement of that's like they'll make the problem go away as long as the kid doesn't get in trouble. And of course, the teacher kind of agrees with this, and this type of stuff continues on like that as this teacher kind of starts to become the exact type of person he set out to bring down. Lost. So another teacher, while doing filing, finds some documents of forged test results and such from the hero teacher, and finding that he's kind of doing stuff behind the scenes to make these other boys perform well, even though just so they don't cause trouble. But once the hero teacher kind of finds out about this, he does something really, which is he gets into a student-only chat room, playing off himself as another student, and starts spreading rumors about that other teacher. Where the rumors are that other teacher doing things with another student. You can use your imagination on that. Which, of course, they aren't true. But he just needs another teacher on the way, so he's ruined this other person's life. And now we get back to our ghost teacher who confronts the hero teacher about this. And while in the confrontation, the teacher that just had his life ruined jumps off of the roof of the school and lands on top of the client, killing them both. So when Ronnie and Patty go out to do their field work on that one, Rocky finds that the students are still buying into that rumor and have pinpointed a student that might be referring to. And and that student is not having a good time. Patty, on the other hand, exposes the teacher and basically ruins him. But then something happens. The student that was being bullied is on the roof of the school and is going to jump off. Rahi goes to save that student and ends up getting pulled off of the school with her. Patty manages to intervene and save them both. But in the process of doing so, he kind of had to break the rules of interacting with the physical world. So, he ends up having to confront Hades and gets chewed out about it. But they get to then move on to their next client, which is a teenage girl whose ex is her father, and she is very defensive, protective of him with almost complete unconditional love towards him. But her story is that her father is in a mass amount of debt, and she blames that debt on a woman that he is with, because this other woman basically wants to be spoiled rotten. Our client, the kid, is doing very well in school and actually gets an offer to be a part of some astronomer space thing, which she takes up very quickly. But when she gets home, she finds that her dad is in a complete tizzy because he is now $30,000 in debt from gambling. Because he wanted to try and get some money to be able to buy that woman a handbag. But what ends up happening, what happens is the girl goes back to school a wreck from the whole ordeal. And the lady that actually gave her the offer about the space program thing gave her a way out, saying, "I'll help you with your father's debt, but you have to help me with some research that I'm doing." She agrees to that. So the girl ends up going to a spot that she was told to hand over the money, where she then gets ambushed and knocked out. Once she comes to, she's in front of the entire mob boss and whatnot. She hands over the money, and the mob boss kind of laughs because the number is wrong. Because it's not 30,000, it's 300,000. And he also says that her father sold her to them. She doesn't believe this at all, and she still acts completely defensive of her father. And when she's trying to escape, that she finds that she's on a ship in the middle of the ocean. So she runs to the front of the ship, and while being surrounded, she jumps off. Patty and Rahi then go on to do their field work, and where they need to get attention of find the father is near the mob boss, the loan shark. Either way, these things can be interchangeable, I guess. But they locate them down to a casino. But to be able to grab their attention, they decide to play poker. And of course, with Rahi's condition, she does extremely well and does get their attention. But what they end up finding is the father is living a pretty grand old life. He doesn't have an issue in the world. Doesn't really seem bothered by anything that's happened either. So, once they go back to the theater and tell the girl this, she still acts with complete unconditional love towards her father. So, they go on with the performance anyway. Once he gets transported there, the stage play goes off pretty well as it would. Once he gets onto the stage, pretty much with complete regret and the realization of, oh God, what have I done? The girl possessing Rahi then stabs him. And then we're thrown to a flashback, which we see that when she was jumping off of the ship, she saw her father on the ship. And with everything else, she kind of realizes he doesn't really care about her, and he just sold her off. So she wants to take her revenge on him, and she uses the theater to be able to do so. But in that act, that turns her into an evil spirit. Karen needs to intervene in the whole matter to try and separate her from Rahi, because with Rahi now being possessed by an evil spirit, this puts at the risk of losing her. He manages to separate the two and takes care of the evil spirit by basically erasing her from existence. Rahi, a few days later, ends up waking up out of what was a shock-induced coma from the whole ordeal. And Corin wants her to leave the theater, but she refuses to do so. Corin gets called to Hades to have to deal with the fallout of what just happened, where Patty and Rahi, on the other hand, get assigned to a restaurant, which does the same thing, but of course handles more fruit-related attachments. Where there, the client is a dancer that had a relationship with another guy who really liked her performing. And those two had a great relationship until the guy was sent off to London by his parents, and the connection between them became lesser and lesser. And she was approached by another guy who was constantly trying to give her a good offer for work, and she eventually took it. And those two got to know each other really well, and they were going to eventually then get married. But sometime before the wedding, she ends up doing her work. She ends up spotting the first guy again, and while being a bit confrontational, does wish him the best in life. And while the guy then offers to see her one last time, she wants to accept that on her wedding day. So instead of going to her wedding immediately, she wants to hurry and have one last meal with the first guy. But she hurries her driver, which causes them to get into an accident. And now, with years later, when Patty and Ronnie do their field work, they find that the guy she was supposed to marry ended up abusing drugs and fell into a deep state of dismay and disrepair. Where the first guy was a lawyer investigating that company for said drug usage. So, when they explained the actual situation to the first guy, in realizing he had the whole situation all wrong, I need to check something. Okay, that's fine. Sorry. This is the second time I had to do this recording because the audio was all messed up. So I'm just checking to see the audio is good. It's fine. Okay, but he ends up getting his invitation to the restaurant and is able to have one last meal with the girl. Of course, possessing Rocky. So with that done, they go back to the theater to handle another client. This time, it's a woman who had dreams of being a singer when she was younger, but fate had other plans as her house ended up catching on fire, killing both her parents and horribly scarring her. And so she was able to get into music business. She was working background stuff. And she still loved singing, and while doing her singing, she while doing singing, she caught the attention of an upcoming idol, where this idol had her on as his manager, and things were going well. She was basically living her dreams through him, and he was getting some pretty great opportunities. But we find that that woman was doing stuff behind the scenes. Anybody that seemed to be a problem of some kind, she would take care of. If he was not the first actor to get a position, she would injure the main actor, so he would get that part. Anybody that seemed to be a bit of a nuisance, such as clingy fans or whatever, she would basically take care of them in some way or another. Once he found out about this, obviously he was not happy about it and tried to have her gotten rid of. But of course, but when he tried to contact the CEO, he found that there was no CEO because it was her. She came up with a fake name of the CEO to basically hide her wrongdoing, I guess. I don't know how that whole thing really works out. So, seeing himself trapped in this situation and with no way out, he overdoses on pills. Years later, she can't get over the whole ordeal and ends up distracting herself while driving and ends up crashing her car into a truck, causing the truck to lose control and T-bone the vehicle that Rahi was in. And once Rahi hears that, it isn't good. She goes into complete dismay and is completely reluctant to even help this person. But in her thoughts, she finds that the X in this instant is Corin. And Corin doesn't know if he can do it either. But she decides to go on with it and invite Corin as a guest and pick out the play for herself. And everything goes pretty well until Corin basically interrupts the show and makes his point. And this kind of gives some flashbacks for Rahi as well, where they both kind of have their moments of realization. And they both kind of come to the conclusion that, while they will accept the apology, they cannot forgive her. This is enough for her to be able to pass on. And once Rahi goes back home, having to deal with everything that just happened, they find that Rahi is able to express her emotions again. She's regained the ability to express herself in her voice and in her facial expressions. Jesus. So, where was I? Oh, yeah. So, years go by, and Rahi is doing really well. And she may occasionally see Patty, but is unable to approach him, as he will essentially go and hide himself away from her, as he really shouldn't be interacting with her at this point. But with that, that is Ghost Theater. The story was really good, and I really liked it. And I hope you all have a good enjoyment of it as well. So with that, I would like to thank you all for listening if you've made it to this point. And please check the description, as there is a big list of stories that I have read. And I would appreciate if you all would pick a story from that list to want to hear next time. Hopefully, in the case, we will get through each of these stories, and there will be a nice, long suggestion of stories for you all to listen to and hopefully want to read. And I do encourage you go and read these stories. The art is fantastic. The stories themselves are really good. But with that, I'll see you all next time.